Hello, everybody. Welcome to our last Connected Ink session of 2020. My name is Elizabeth Garcia, Social Media Manager for Wacom Americas, and I am pleased to be hosting a wonderful artist today, Jorge R. Gutierrez, for a fascinating look inside his creative journey. Jorge is an award-winning director, animator, painter, writer, voice actor, and production designer. He is known for his work on the Book of Life, El Tigre, The Adventures of Manny Rivera, and Maya and the Three. We're very proud to have Jorge tonight here. Very excited to wrap up Connected Ink, like we say in Mexico, con broche de oro, with a great friend of ours. Hi, Jorge.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me. I'm super honored.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. We're really happy. Wacom has been working really hard for 24 hours. You're the last of our session. We're very happy to be wrapping it up with you with a very inspiring talk, the finding your voice and telling your stories tonight.
I hope everybody's ready, and everybody's mustache grows, including the girls from this talk. So whatever you tell me, I'm good to go.
Yes, we're sure gonna grow some mustache, some macho mustache, and grow very inspired with your story. This is going to be about an hour talk. Jorge has a lot to say, so we're going to just let him run with it. I'm not going to be interrupting with any Q&A until after the talk. And this is also being streamed on YouTube, so we're going to be reading questions from YouTube as well. So if you have any questions for Jorge, drop them on YouTube chat, and I'll be hearing from my team and chatting with Jorge in about an hour. Jorge, take it away.
All right, let's do this. All right, you guys. So I'm going to pretty much take you through my whole path and my career. To me, advice is always has more weight when it comes from someone who's sort of experienced and lived those things. And I'm going to go and walk you guys through this crazy adventure that's been my career. And my goal has always been to find my own voice and to tell stories. So that's what my talk is about. And like all stories, and especially the stories that I like, it all starts with a little kid. And so I am originally from Mexico, as Elizabeth said. My parents, my grandparents, everybody's from different parts of Mexico. So when I say I'm from Mexico, I mean it. I'm from all these different parts, the north, the south, the east. I'm from everywhere. I grew up in a giant city, Mexico City, which is this giant city. My father is an architect who is originally from Tijuana, the border city to the U.S. in the north of Mexico. My mother is from Mexico City. She's very bohemian. My dad being an architect, and my mother being very bohemian. She sang, she played the guitar. My dad drew all day, right? This is before computers. So I just thought everybody's parents were artists. You just had to decide what kind of artist you wanted to be. So it was kind of shocking to go to other friends' house and see that their parents weren't artists. But for me, it was always, I'm going to be an artist. I don't know what art I'm going to follow. When I got a little bit older, when I was 9 years old, my parents moved us to my dad's hometown, Tijuana, which again is a north city right next to the U.S. That's literally where I grew up. One side was the U.S., one side was Mexico. Tijuana was crazy. It was a crazy city. When we moved there, it was probably one of the most violent cities in all of Mexico. But my father said we will find opportunities there, so we all went there. All I knew about Tijuana was from The Simpsons, and it was all true. I was a middle-class Mexican, so I went to a community art school in high school as a kid, trying to learn how to paint, how to write, how to make movies, how to act. So I was taking as many classes as I could because I love the arts. I went to Secult, this public Tijuana Art Center in Tijuana. So I'm a kid of those programs and government institutions that helped a lot of young artists in Mexico. In 1994, I met the love of my life, my wife Sandra, who's still my muse and my greatest collaborator, and we've been working together forever. When I was maybe 14, 15, one of my family had a big dinner, and my father asked me in front of everybody, Jorge, what do you want to do for a living? What kind of artist are you going to be? And I said, Papa, I want to be a painter, or I want to be a writer, or I want to be a film director. And everybody laughed, including him. And then a family friend said, that's animation. You get to make paintings move, you get to tell stories, and you literally get to make little movies. So that was it. He planted that seed in my head. I had loved animation. I had loved cartoons. I just didn't know someone like me could do those things. So my father said, find the hardest school in the world to do this. And if you can get in, maybe I will let you study it. Traditional Mexican dad. So I found out that 3 hours, literally 3 hours from where I lived by car, was Cal Arts, this very, very famous animation school where everybody, most of the directors of animated features and TV shows of that time had gone to the school. It was super hard to get in. One student out of, I think it was like 300 that applied would get in. And so I went there when I was 17 years old with a portfolio, and I took all these drawings that I thought, these are what Americans want to see, because I'm a kid from Mexico and I didn't know. So I drew Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse and Bart Simpson, basically anything I thought the Americans wanted to see. And then I also took a portfolio of my paintings about Mexico and about my culture and about all the things I love. But I wasn't going to show those to the animation people because I didn't think you could do anything with those. I just wanted to see if I could get into painting schools purely for ego. I just wanted to know if my paintings were good enough. So I go to the line for Cal Arts where they review your portfolios. A very famous animator named Jules Engel ran that program at Cal Arts. He would look at people's drawings and destroy them. So when they got to me and I showed him my cartoony drawings of Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse and Bart Simpson, he looked at them and he said, "This is crap. This is terrible." And he went drawing by drawing and destroying me on each one. And by the end of it, he said words that sort of stayed with me for forever. He said, a copy machine could have done these. You have no voice. You're not an artist. Figure out something else to do. You have nothing to say. I was 17, so that was heavy words on my heart. He closed the portfolio. I walked away devastated. The universe took pity on me, and I left my painting portfolio on the table. And he opened it, and he saw this painting. And he looked at it, and his eyes lit up, and he said, "Jorge," or "Sad boy, come back." So I walked back, and he said, "What is this?" And I said, "Well, it's a painting about Mexico." And he said, "Well, tell me about the painting." And I said, "Oh, it's about a woman who had an affair with a coyote, and now her children are half human, half coyotes, and it's a metaphor for Mexican Americans and the complicated relationship between the U.S. and Mexico." And the more I told him the story behind the painting, the more he said, "This is a film." And I must have had 20 paintings in that portfolio. And he made me tell him the story of every painting. And at the end of it, he said, "Luzonovich, why didn't you show me this first?" And I said, "Well, because I didn't think that's what you guys wanted to see." And he said, "You stupid boy. This is your voice. This is who you are. Why did you paint these paintings? Why did you write these stories?" And I didn't know, right? I'm 17. So I said, "I don't know, because they just came out of me." And he said, "That is your voice. I will let you into the school, but you have to swear to me that you will not draw things people think they want to see from you. You will draw the things that come out of you, that you feel." And that was it. I got in. I got into the experimental animated program at Cal Arts. As soon as I got in there, I realized I'm the worst artist in the whole school. I was pretty low in skill level. But I said, we don't have enough money for me to go to the school. It's really expensive, especially as a Mexican. My parents had saved for years. My grandfather had saved for years. I had worked, and we only had enough money for me to go zero point 0.7 of a year. So I said, I'm going to learn everything that needs to be learned in that 1 year. And if you're expected to do a short every year for 4 years, I'm going to do 4 shorts in 1 year. And if you're expected to do 80 classes in 4 years, I'm going to do 80 classes in 1 year. So I tried to sign up to do as much as I could. And sure enough, I got sent to the president's office my first day. You can't do this test. It's physically impossible. But the president heard my story. He thought I was really funny. And he said, I'll make a deal with you. If you can do 2 years worth of classes and get the highest grade possible, I will give you a reward. And so I had the power of youth back then, and I worked so hard. And I always joke about this, but I basically cheated by working harder than everybody else. So if we would get an assignment to design a character, for example, I would design 10 characters on my own, pick the best one, and then turn that one in. So when no one was looking, I was getting better. And I tried to do this for all my classes. And so I killed myself that first year. At the end of the year, I did 2 years worth of classes. I got the highest grade possible. And the school was very, very kind to me. And they gave me a full scholarship. And then eventually I did my master's there. The Mexican government paid for me to study there. I still had help from my parents. But I basically got to go to CalArts to do my bachelor's and master's with all this help. I love animation. I love the medium. So I tried everything. This was my first student short in 1995, done on cells, painted by hand. It was super, super hard. I did a bunch of stop motion stuff. I tried my hand at live action. That's my girlfriend, Sandra, who's now my wife. Those are my mom and my dad. Then I got an internship in 1999, a year before I graduated, to work on the movie Stuart Little as a CG character animation intern. And I learned a lot. And the first thing I learned was I love story and I love design. And those two things have been figured out by the time animation starts. So as much as I love animating and I love the medium of animation, I decided I don't want to be an animator. It's just not for me. So I went back to school, 1 year left to finish my final student film. It's called Carmelo. It was 8 minutes, and I worked so hard on it. And I really, really wanted to showcase, again, my culture and showcase Mexico. And this is where the Book of Life comes from. This is literally the short that inspired the Book of Life. I finished the film, and I won a student Emmy. It was a huge deal to me, and it really opened a tons of doors. Kind of changed everything. I got a manager at that point, Aaron Berger, that I'm still with, and he said, we need to send you to all the studios to pitch a feature version of Carmelo. And so he sent me everywhere. He sent me to Disney and Fox and DreamWorks and every studio in town. And pretty much, this is in 2001, every studio executive told me the same thing. No one wants to see a film about dead Mexicans. And I think I might have been too early. So then I kept pitching. I said, well, I'm too young to make a movie, right? That's what all the executives would say. You're just a dumb kid out of school. Just because you won an award doesn't mean you can direct a whole feature. Get more experience under your belt. And I said, yeah, they're right. So I went back home and I taught myself Flash. And to the same producers that I had been an intern with, I pitched them an internet cartoon. I put it up online. I spent like 3 weeks with my wife and a couple of friends making this little cartoon short. And it got 20,000 views in the year 2000, which is a huge deal. So Sony Pictures said, we want to buy your idea. We want to make this little cartoon of yours. Good news, you get to write them, direct them, do the voices, paint the backgrounds, do the music, and animate them. And the more jobs they listed, the more excited I was, because in my head I thought, well, they're paying me to make student shorts. And what was great about it was I didn't know any better. So I was super excited. We got married on Day of the Dead, which obviously inspired the Book of Life, and the Book of Life inspired that wedding. So I was already sort of rewriting that story over and over. My wife moved to the US. We had a work visa. I thought, we're bulletproof. Nothing can happen to us. And then 9/11 happened. and they canceled our show and they shut down the whole division at Sony. It was crazy because when they shut it down, they told myself and everybody in that studio, Sony Pictures Digital Entertainment Division, they brought us all into a giant room, and the president of the division came out crying. Never a good sign when your boss comes out crying. And he said, everybody go back to your desks. This is at 11 o'clock in the morning. Go back to your desks. At 3 p.m., we're going to wipe out all the hard drives. Everybody started crying. People started kicking the floor. And then he said a magic phrase. He said, go back to your desks and take whatever you think you deserve. So everybody's crying, everybody's angry. But when I heard that, I smiled and I ran back to my desk and I called my wife, and we live right next door because I hate driving. So wherever we work, we always move right next to it. And I called her and I said, Sandra, bring 2 shopping carts. We deserve the world. And she's such a good Mexican wife. She didn't even question that. She said, got it. And she hung up the phone. 5 minutes later, she showed up with these 2 giant shopping carts, and we took everything I thought we deserved. So we took, Wacom tablets, computer monitors, computers, animation supplies, animation paper. I mean, I even took my chair. It was crazy. So we were like Haitian refugees with these 2 giant shopping carts full of equipment. And that's how we started our first studio, from the ashes of what had happened. And at that point, the world was changing in animation. And because I learned Flash, I got called in to work on a show called Mucha Lucha for Warner Brothers. And it was the first ever Flash animated TV show. And I wanted to study how did the 2 creators, Eddie Morton and Lily Chin, how did they pitch the show? How did they get it sold? So I really, really sort of became a student of, all right, I sold a web cartoon. Now I want to know how they sold a TV show. And I really learned a ton from those guys. I kept doing a lot of freelance all over LA. Any studio that would hire me, you'd hire me to do 5 characters in black and white, and I would do 15 in color. I was the guy who always over-delivered. Because of my reputation started growing, eventually Disney called me in, Walt Disney TV Animation, and said, hey, pitch us a show. So we pitched this crazy show called Pepe the Bull that was very much inspired by a lot of family members and a lot of things in Mexico. And the show did not go through at Disney. They wanted us to change it and make it about the sister. And honestly, that's not what the show was about. So they killed it. But thanks to that, we jumped onto another show called The Buzz on Maggie at Disney. This was Disney's first ever Flash TV cartoon show. Again, both my wife and I worked on it. And again, at this point, I would tell anybody who would hire me, if you hire me, Mexican things are going to show up in your show. So as long as you're okay with that, I can totally work on your show. So I snuck in as much pro Latin culture things into the show. And then they canceled it. And at that point, I was still pitching everywhere in town. And I had 3 more shows die in development at Disney and Warner Brothers. And what that meant was they liked an idea enough that they would hire me to write and develop and team up with different people to sort of try to expand what the TV show would be like. But eventually, there's a million reasons why shows don't go through. Everybody would have gotten discouraged after this many shows would die. But I kept saying, I'm basically asking a studio to spend $20 million on my idea. Of course I'm going to keep asking. So because of all that experience, having done all those pilots, I really believe it prepared us for our first ever TV show. We did the pilot in 2004, El Tigre, The Adventures of Manny Rivera. And at this point, I had figured out my story and every experience I lived in my life. Those are the greatest source of inspiration. When I deciphered my favorite albums, my favorite movies, my favorite records, my favorite first pieces from artists, they were always a window into the world they came from. And they were always a window to the experience of where they grew up. So, for example, in hip-hop albums, the first album is always about the struggle to come up. For directors, a lot of directors all around the world, their first movie, they don't have a lot of budgets. So they have to shoot in their hometown, or they have to shoot somewhere very local because that's all they can afford. But those stories are very pure because they're very autobiographical and they're referencing a truth that the director or the artist really understands. So that was my huge inspiration. I said, I'm gonna go into my past and I'm gonna go into myself. And a lot of these memories are painful, but I'm gonna I'm going to let these experiences become sort of the foundation and the dirt where I can plant these stories. And so El Tigre, for anybody who's never seen it, was a show about a little kid who had a dad who is a superhero and a grandfather who's a supervillain and a best friend who's a troublemaker. So what does that have to do with me? In real life, I idolized my dad and I idolized my grandfather. My father was an architect, or is an architect. My grandfather was a Mexican general in the Mexican army. And my aunts would say, "You're so much like both of them. What are you going to be when you grow up?" I would go look at my dad at work, and he'd be drawing all day, right, before computers, on paper. And I would go, "Papa, can you draw me, a dinosaur or a robot?" And he would just put a piece of paper, draw beautiful, beautiful drawings, give them to me, and then keep working. And so I thought, my father has superpowers. He can draw. And I would go visit my grandfather, and it was the opposite. His office was really dark. The walls were red. He was always hushed over on the phone. He would disappear for weeks. And I always thought, oh, I think my grandfather's a supervillain. So when my aunts would grab me by the cheeks and they would say, Jorge or Jorgito, when you grow up, what are you going to do? Are you going to be like your father? Are you going to be an artist? Or are you going to be like your grandfather? Are you going to go into the military? And so that's where El Tigre came from. The character Frida, who's the troublemaking best friend, that is Sandra as a kid. In the show, Frida wants to be a rock star. Her father is a chief of police. Her mother is a judge in the city. She has two sisters, and they are both police cadets. In real life, Sandra's dad was a surgeon. Her mother was a teacher, or is a teacher, and her three sisters studied medicine. So Sandra was the black sheep for wanting to be an artist. And so that became the inspiration for the show. At this point, I got to design all the men. Sandra designs most of the women. That's pretty much what we do now. And we based it all on people we knew and people we grew up with. We collaborated in all the villains. Super inspired by Mexican folklore and sort of a deconstruction of the nuclear family. I love spaghetti westerns. So spaghetti westerns became a huge influence on the show and the way we did it and the music. The show, in a nutshell, in the premises, evil grandpa, hero dad, what will he choose? That's basically what the show is about. And this is all the Bible we use. We're huge fans of Mexican artists and the history of Mexican art. So Manny Rivera and Frida Suarez, their names are based on the most famous Mexican couple of artists, Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. And then the huge inspiration for the show became folk art and popular art. Instead of looking at other cartoons, we were looking at our culture. And so we were referencing bands and we were referencing old traditions and old movies and old prints. And we wanted to infuse our show with all that history. Even though the audience wouldn't know it, we would know it. And it would be all in there. So, for example, there's no tigers in Mexico, but the word tiger and the concept of a tiger is everywhere. There's soccer teams, there's bands, there's dances. It's all part of Mexico, yet there are no tigers. The dad was inspired by traditional Mexican wrestling. The grandpa was inspired by Mexicans in murals and Mexicans in pop culture. We even had robots inspired by a lot of the sci-fi in Mexico. The girl, Frida, inspired by all the punk bands we used to love growing up. The mom was inspired by all these old school actresses from Mexican movies. The villain, at that point, I had already developed Book of Life. So this is the daughter of the two gods in Book of Life. And that was kind of a big, big icon that we wanted to start using. At that point, we started messing around with Mesoamerican designs. And we just had a ton of fun making the show. We were a super young crew, trying out a lot of experiments. As you guys can see, this was the first ever Flash show at Nickelodeon. So we were trying a million things. We were the first show at Nick to do storyboards digitally. So that's why a lot of these drawings you see are still done on paper. So we owe Wacom and we we were the first ones to try Cintiqs at Nickelodeon. And man, it was tough to convince some of the older artists because they were so easy to dismiss back then. But we super embraced it, right? Technology's always been something that I love to jump on when no one else is doing it, just to see what we can do, because a lot of places have these set parameters of how to do things, and I think new technology allows you to break those sort of old ideas. It was a huge hit when it came out. El Tigre had a 3.4 million total viewers back then on television, which is a huge deal. This is probably the most proud fact we have for our show. Sandra became the first Mexican woman to win an Emmy for character design, and I could not have been more proud of her. And she rubbed it in my face the whole year. And then the year later, the show won 7 Emmys, and I won the same Emmy for design. And so we could not have been happier. The show won Emmys for storyboarding, for directing, for art direction. I mean, it's the most Emmys a show's won in 1 year. We thought, we're going to live forever. We made it. After all that giant struggle, we did it. And Nickelodeon canceled the show. So the ratings were not good enough. There was parts of the U.S. that were not into a show about Mexicans. You can guess which parts. And so the ratings in the middle of America basically didn't do very well. So Nickelodeon said, we can't keep making the show. At that point, I got called in to go to DreamWorks. They said, hey, we want to make a Mexican Day of the Dead movie. Do you have an idea? And I said, actually, I do. And I did not tell them this, but I had pitched them a Book of Life, which was called The Matador back then, right out of school. I took out the same 40-page outline that I had written. I ripped the first page off. I put a new first page with a new date, and I turned it in almost as a joke. And they read it, and before they had said it's amateurish, it's ghoulish, it's too dark and too weird. And this time, same exact document, except 7 Emmys later, they read it and they said, this is groundbreaking and unique and unlike nothing we've ever seen. And by the way, I can tell the story because all the people who did this and said this aren't there anymore. So we start developing the Book of Life, and I'm there for a year working on the movie version of this. And one day they come in and they say, hey, in order for the movie to keep going, your $160 million movie, we have some changes we want to make. Number one, the main character can't be a bullfighter. Number two, the movie can't take place in Mexico. And number three, the main character can't die. So for anybody who's seen Book of Life, the movie is about a bullfighter in Mexico who dies. So I thought, well, that's not the movie that I want to make. And then they said, we would love for your movie to now be a hip hop salsa musical. And so that was enough for me. I thanked them for the time, and I quit the movie. Thankfully, I had not sold the rights. I got to keep my rights, and I walked away. And after that, obviously, they killed the movie there. Sandra was pregnant. That's what estoy embarazada means with our kid. And I said, oh, no, they canceled our TV show, and I just walked away from a giant DreamWorks movie. All right, let's start doing more stuff. We did a new pilot for Disney for a new show called Karma Gets Expelled. You can see the pilot on supermacho.com if anybody wants to check it out. Sandra pretty much took the lead on the designs on this one, and we made this crazy show about a rebellious Latina girl who keeps getting in trouble for the right reasons. We went all out. We made this crazy pilot, and then they tested the show, and depending on who you ask, they might have asked us to change the ethnicity of the main character, and we decided, hells no, we're not going to do that. And so the show did not go through. Our son was born. This is in Tijuana, Mexico, when we went to visit our parents. After that, Nickelodeon called me back and said, oh, I'm sorry we killed El Tigre. We promised not to do that to you guys again. Pitch us another show. So I pitched another crazy show called Super Macho Fighter, which is basically Hamlet with wrestlers. And I love Street Fighter, so it's very much inspired by Street Fighter. And we did a ton of art. We did this crazy pilot for it. And then we tested it. And Nickelodeon decided, nope, we can't make a show about wrestling. So after that, I got called in by Mad Magazine, the cartoon at Cartoon Network. They were really, really cool. And they let me do little shorts, and they let me do a bunch of parodies of things I love. Sorry about that. And so I got to do sort of my crazy Mexican version of Batman, Batman, Bat Hombre and Ruben. And then on the side, I just started painting. I just needed to get away from computers a little bit, needed to get my hands dirty. So I just kept painting on the side. And I started to wonder, like, oh, maybe that was it for me as a creator. And maybe that was it as a as a showrunner. I guess I'll just put my energy into painting. And just as I was sort of focusing on just uh, doing shorts for Warner Brothers and painting, out of nowhere, Book of Life happened. Brad Booker, a producer who was a friend of mine, who was an animator on Stuart Little when I first started, and I was an intern, called me and said, "Hey, we don't have, Real Effects wants to make original movies. We don't have the money of a DreamWorks, but we have half the money to make a movie. If you want to help develop it and help us find the other half, we can absolutely make $50 million version of the movie. We're a young studio. You've never directed. We've never made a theatrical film. If you believe in us, we'll believe in you." And so I sat down with my wife and I said, worst case scenario, we go to Texas, and then the movie doesn't get made, and we didn't lose anything, just time. But what if it does happen? And what if we get to make this movie? The reward is just too big. And my wife, with a new kid, with a new baby, she looked me in the eye and she said, "Texas, here we come." And so we got all our stuff together. We'd never been to Dallas. We moved there. We thought everybody would come with us from El Tigre. That was too crazy. No one came with us. And we got a year. They gave us a year to develop the movie, to write the script. I got to hire a production designer, Simon Varela, and an art director, Paul Sullivan. And we started designing and making maquettes. We worked with this incredible artist in El Salvador to make some maquettes. Again, all these are the super early designs of La Muerte, of Cibalba. We did this crazy lineup of all the characters. This is sort of developing the look of the world. Simon still works on traditional media, so this is an actual charcoal drawing. Then it went to digital and it got painted. This is Paul Sullivan's sketch of the Land of the Dead, and then the first sort of painting, sort of selling what that world would look like. This is the Land of the Forgotten. Again, another Simon piece. All shape languages, triangles and scary, and a beautiful Paul painting of that land. And then this was a big painting. This was a painting where Simon took my bull design and sort of fleshed everything out. And then Paul did an incredible job painting this. And this is the image that really sold the movie to a lot of people. They would look at this painting and go, "What? Why does that bullfighter have a guitar? And why is he facing a giant bull with swords everywhere? And where the hell are they?" And that was enough. That hooked a lot of people. So during that year, we got to do 9 paintings. They asked me, "Who's your dream producer?" I said, "Well, Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro would be my dream to have as a producer. I can't imagine having someone like him back this movie." So we tried really hard to get to him, and it was very, very difficult. He said no 15 times to these meetings, till finally, after a lot of meetings, and we're friends now, so he tells me this story. He said, "Bring him to my house so I can say no to his face." And I was just excited to meet him and get a no from his face, right? It was going to be an honor to be rejected by him. So we go to his house. This is in August in LA. I've told this story many times, and I love it because I get to relive that moment. We get to his amazing, amazing house. He, at that time, lived in 2 houses, one with his wife and 2 daughters, and one where he has all his artwork and all his beautiful collection of movie memorabilia. And, he's an animation lover, so he has original, beautiful art from all these incredible films. We go to his house. It's covered in art. So we make a horrible decision, and we decide, well, let's put our maquettes and our paintings outside so they don't compete. Jorge I had been told you had 30 minutes to pitch to him. So we put everything outside, and it's hot, and he's a big guy, and I'm a big guy, so we both start sweating a little bit. And I take the most important breath of my life. I'm ready for a 30-minute pitch. And before any words can come out of my mouth, he, at this point, affectionately would call me Gordo. He says, Gordo, you have 5 minutes. So because it was hot, I'm assuming, he cut my pitch from 30 minutes to 5 minutes. I said, no problem. I can do this. So again, I take the most important breath of my life. I summon the spirit of my ancestors to go through me, to tell this epic tale. And as soon as my mouth opens, my people betray me. The mansion next door, there must have been 5 leaf blower guys, gardening guys. And as soon as they saw my mouth open, they turn on their leaf blowers, and a wave of sound hits me. And I look at Guillermo, and I yell, Guillermo, should we wait till they finish? And he looks at me with his beautiful blue eyes, and he goes, Gordo, 4 minutes. And that was it. I had to pitch the movie in 4 minutes. It's a very tender, loving story. So the yelled leaf blower 4-minute version of the movie was terrible. I almost fell in the pole multiple times. I was sweating. One of our producers just stood up and he was like, I've seen enough. It was like a car crash, and he left. Yet to be found. And so by the time I finished, Guillermo's laughing, but he's not laughing at the jokes or the things that I was trying to make funny. He's laughing at how terrible it went. So we go inside his house. Everybody's cleaning up. Everybody looks depressed. I sit down and I tell Guillermo, I'm so sorry about my chip. My pitch wasn't that great. And he goes, Gordo, not great. That was the worst pitch I've ever seen. So I stand up and I thank him for his time. And he says, sit down. And then everything changed. He said, Gordo, I know who you are. Every Saturday, I would watch El Tigre with my daughters. I know your sense of humor. I know your voice. I know your art. And I know how much you love our culture. Of course, I'm going to produce your movie. So I stood up really excited. I peed my pants, but I was so sweaty no one could tell. He stands up. We hug. Our liquids combine. I feel like his DNA rubbed all over me. And then he says, Gordo, this is very important. Did you write the script? If you didn't write the script, you're not a real director. And I said, no. I co-wrote the script with my head writer on El Tigre, Doug Landale. Let me run and get it. So I run to my car. I open the trunk. My script is right there. Unfortunately, we'd gone to a wedding the night before. And at the wedding, they gave tequila. It's a Mexican wedding. They gave tequila bottles, and a tequila bottle broke. And so my script was drenched in tequila. So I grab my script, and I'm running, super nervous, and I'm blowing on it. And I hand him my script, and he grabs it with his giant, beautiful, meaty hands, and he looks at it, and he smells it, and he goes, Gordo, this is a good script. And that was it. Guillermo signed on as a producer, and the movie was on. Without Guillermo, this movie does not get made. I got to collaborate with my hero. I got to learn from my hero. He became not only a mentor, but a great friend and a shoulder to cry on, because he lived through all this on many of his projects. So every time the sky got dark and the forces of Hollywood crushed me, he was always there with a kind word and encouragement. And he would joke that in the ring, when my tooth would fall off, he would put it back on and push me back into the fight. And he definitely did. So we worked on Book of Life. We had a very small team. I love art of books and I love painting, so I really wanted the movie to look like the paintings. And we started getting pretty close. So what you see at the top are paintings. What you see at the bottom are stills from the movie. And we got close. It's pretty crazy about how close we got with lighting. And then we ran out of money. And so we hadn't done The Land of the Dead. So at that point, Paul Sullivan kind of sat down and figured out a way to do it. How much money did we have? How many resources did we have? He came up with this modular sort of Lego style version of how to build this thing. And so these pieces, this and this, we made the whole Land of the Dead with those pieces. And obviously people don't believe us. So we made this video to show everyone how we did it. And I really believe that up until this point in my life, every struggle, every bad thing that had happened, every difficult thing had taught me to do the most with the least. And I think this shot kind of sums that up. As you guys can see, there's surfacing and lighting and taking out all those lights and textures. And this is what the pieces I just showed you. And that's how we did the whole Land of the Dead with that many pieces. So that that's how we made the movie. It was a small team of really, really emotionally invested people at Real Effects who really pour their heart and soul. The actors, the musicians, it was incredible. Guillermo and I went to Mexico to promote the movie. This is the day of the premiere of the movie here in LA. I don't remember because it was so crazy. So I look at a lot of these pictures and I'm like, oh my God, why don't I remember these moments? The movie came out in the U.S. The movie came out in Mexico. It came out all over the world. It changed my life. It really did. And after that, I was exhausted. I just needed to reset and I needed to recharge. And I started painting. And someone from El Pollo Loco saw my paintings and said, "Hey, why don't you paint one of our restaurants?" So I designed a mural for them, and they put it up. And I had all this leftover paint from painting another mural, and so I just started painting, and I started doing all these paintings at home. And I would do my color comps digitally, and then try to emulate that with real paint. So this is all house paint, and I just painted like crazy. So if people died, I would immediately paint them. And these were kind of fast paintings, and I did a ton. It was just sort of Mexican versions and bootlegs of different things. Everything Jules told me not to do, I was doing, but my version of it. And then I had a big art show, and it was kind of a big success. It went really well, and then they did a book about my paintings, and then we just kept getting invited to paint things. My other greatest pleasure was going around all of Mexico and seeing people dress up as our characters and getting pictures from characters from the movie from all over the world. So that's been a crazy, crazy, crazy thing. You see these drawings come to life, and people have made them their own. People do incredible art inspired by the movie or dress up like these guys look more like the characters than the real characters. The other crazy thing is we get tattoos sent by different people of all the characters that they get tattooed all over their bodies forever, which is pretty crazy to me. Again, thanks to the movie, Microsoft hired us to do a Super Bowl commercial to talk about the movie, and that was a huge, huge deal. Then Google called me up and said, "Hey, we want to make a virtual reality short. Would you like to pitch us one?" And I said, "Well, I think virtual reality is like Mexican wrestling. You put a mask on, just like in virtual reality." And so I said, "Well, my favorite emotion is my family and the emotion that creates. So I want to make a short about my family." So I studied lots of Mexican wrestling, and I remembered this bullfighter that I saw in Mexico who bullfighted with only one leg. And I remember being in a bullfight with my dad when I was very little, and a bull hit him, and his leg went flying. And he said, "Jorge, look what he can do with one leg. What will you do with two legs?" So that's the type of dad I had. So I started studying a lot of athletes and a lot of people missing limbs. And I said, that's it. I'm going to make a story about a wrestler who's missing a leg. So these are all, the original sketches. We started developing what this old time wrestler was going to look like. This is a beautiful Paul Sullivan painting, sort of designing what these characters were going to look like. This is the stuff I would give to the modelers. A painting of what the surface of the character was going to look like, all this stuff. And so the movie, this virtual reality short, is about this wrestler who's missing a leg. And eventually, at the climax of the story, he realizes, I have a family. and my family is my strength. And I'll tell you guys a quick story. So when my son was born, um, my dad sat me down and said, "Okay, Jorge, you're a father now. What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, Dad, I think I'm going to take less risks in my career, and I'm going to take less risks as an artist because now a little baby depends on me." And he looked at me and he said, "Jorge, did I raise a coward?" And I was taken back by that. And he said, "Any success that you've ever had was because you took risks. What kind of example are you going to be to your son if you don't take risks? If things don't go well, you're going to resent your family. Your family is not your weakness. Your family is your strength. If anything, you take more risks now." And that was a huge lesson to me. Eventually, my son was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5 years old. And I sat down with my dad, same conversation. And he said, "Dad," he told me, "All right, Jorge, your son has autism. What are you going to do now?" And I didn't know I had autism at that time. "What are you going to do now?" And I said, "Dad, I'm gonna take even more risks for him, and now there's more at stake than ever." And he looked at me, and stays with me forever. And he said, "That's my son. I raised you right." And so that's what the short is about. This middle-aged wrestler who has lost a leg feels like he can't compete, but in the end, he realizes his family is his strength. And so his little boy jumps in the ring. The wife and mother gives the little boy a special mask, and the boy puts the mask on and becomes the leg of the dad. So now the dad and the son are strong together, and they defeat the bad guy. So I just kind of spoiled it for you guys, but that's what the short was. It was nominated for Annies and nominated for Emmys, and it was one of those experiences that, again, the more I went into my personal life and the more I exposed my soul and my heart, I think the better things are. And they're uncomfortable and they're painful sometimes to talk about, but these are the things that I believe resonate. So I obviously don't want to end on a sad note. What am I doing now? And there's not a lot I can show or talk about, but I am currently at Netflix Animation. I cannot be happier to be alongside a lot of my heroes, like Henry Selick and Glenn Keane, and all these guys I idolized are there. A lot of my friends and contemporaries like Shannon Tyndall and Mark Osborne. And, I mean, they haven't announced a lot of the people there, but it's pretty incredible who's over there. So I went there. They sat me down. Melissa Cobb, who is someone I super admire, said to me, "Pitch us something that you don't think you can get made anywhere but here." So of course, I went back into my life, and I went back into when I was a little kid, and I loved going to the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City. And I love seeing all the implied history of the Mayans and the Aztecs and the Olmecs and the Toltecs. Basically, the Mesoamerican history of Mexico is incredible, and the folklore and the legends are just phenomenal. This is one of my favorite murals in that museum. It's a flying serpent versus the jaguar with the sun and the moon. So as a little kid, I was like, "Oh my God, we come from such great history." Uh, with that said, I also felt, wow, everything I've ever made is about a boy. I feel like the bravest thing I can do is showcase the women in my life. And so the three most important women around me are my wife, Sandra, my mom, and my sister. And they've all had pretty remarkable, incredible lives. And I said, well, I want to take them as inspiration, and I'm going to make something about being a badass Mexican woman. And so I pitched Maya and the Three, this crazy, epic 4.5 hour movie series coming to Netflix at the end of next year. And if you like Book of Life and you like El Tigre, this is up there in scope and in epicness and in comedy and in if you like the voice actors for those two things, I think you're gonna like the voice actors for this thing. But we can't announce that stuff till much later. This is what an early visual development painting done by production designer Paul Sullivan. This, like what you see, literally that's the hat. This is my chair. When COVID started, we all went home and we started working from home. And I've been directing this and multiple other things that I can't talk about from home, and it's been an incredible experience. I get to see my family every day. I get to have lunch with them every day. I think for animation, we're built to work from home. I kind of never want to go back to the studio. I just really, really enjoy not having to drive to work, not having to deal with a commute. I really, really like it. I mean, obviously, I miss human interaction in person, but I have a human interaction every day with my crew, and I adore them. So I'm thriving. You know, obviously, not everybody's thriving, and I feel terrible that some people are struggling with this stuff. I don't know if it's because I'm autistic or what, but I'm loving it. Even the one of the things that I was really worried about was how the hell are we going to do music? How the hell are we going to do all these things remotely? I'm working with Gustavo Santaolalla. For anybody who loves The Last of Us, and he won an Oscar for Brokeback Mountain and Insider, Motorcycle Diaries, and of course he did the music for The Book of Life. I'm also working with Tim Davies, who's an incredible composer. Basically, it's my Book of Life team coming back together. This is all I can show you guys from my end of three. The Today Show or Good Morning America, one of those big shows, did a story on Netflix animation. So you can see this was on television. So I'm just showing you screen grabs of some of the paintings that we got to show. This is a sticker given out at a festival, so I can show it to you guys. This is what Maya looks like. And honestly, I could not be more proud. When I started sort of looking into Mexican mythology, and especially the Mayan and the Aztec mythologies, I found myself being a little disappointed that women were the object of desire or the prize or the witch. There wasn't a lot of heroes that were female. And for me, mythology is made up. So why not hack mythology? And why not go into our roots and insert stories that are different? So that's what I wanted to do with Maya. I believe it's my birthright as a Mexican to be able to do this. So Maya is very much inspired by history, but will not be limited by history. And I think, honestly, it's going to be something really, really special. Knock on wood, nothing bad happens. But I cannot wait to share it with all of you and the world. And I couldn't be more proud of the stuff the crew is making. And so with that, I want to thank you all and wish you good luck in all your projects. The biggest theme of I'm hoping that what you guys get from my talk is that when you look at people's careers and when you look at your favorite show creators or your favorite directors or your favorite artists, the journey's not this. It never just goes like that. More than likely, it's this. And there's going to be struggles and there's going to be bad things, but that's part of it. You learn nothing from success. You only learn from failure. And the way to get better is to keep going. And I really, really believe those experiences that we sometimes think are not good or that are painful to us, those are the things that make us stronger. And those are the things that make you better for your next thing. And so when I study my journey, I go, wow, if my internet cartoon hadn't been canceled, I never would have gotten a job in television animation, and I never would have made El Tigre. And if El Tigre hadn't been canceled, I never would have made the Book of Life. And if the Book of Life had done better, I probably would be making Book of Life 3 and 4 right now. I wouldn't be allowed to make anything else. But because of Book of Life not making, $1 billion, I got to go to Netflix, and now I get to make Maya. So all these things, I really believe, made me better. When I want to end also with this image. Super Macho is my nickname, and it was my nickname growing up. And I always tell the story about my grandfather. He sat me down when I was 6 years old. A lot of my stories are about parents sitting me down or having talks with me. And he said, Jorgito, I'm going to teach you the meaning of life. And so I was 6 years old, and he served 2 shots of tequila. And he said, Jorge, and I was super excited, right? I never had tequila. I'm 6 years old. I'm like, I'm going to get the meaning of life. My grandfather serves them, and he says, Jorge, in Mexico, there are two types of men. There are machos, and there are super machos. I said, grandfather, tell me the difference, grandfather. He said, okay. The machos, they get in fights with everybody. They pick the biggest guy in the room and they get in a fight. Those are the machos. But the super machos, they are so macho that they don't fight anybody. It was like Mexican Zen, right? I was like, what? This is crazy. And he goes, the machos, they cheat on their wives. They cheat on their girlfriends. But the super machos, they are faithful till death. Like Mexican samurais or something. I was like, wow, that's incredible. So I'm looking at this tequila shot, and I'm looking at his, and I grab mine, and I say, grandfather, are you super macho? And he looked at me, and he took the tequila away from me, and he drank it, and he said, no. And then he took his own tequila, and he drank it too. And he said, I am not super macho. But Jorge, you can strive to be super macho. In life, there will be two paths every decision you make. The macho decision and the super macho decision. One will be tough, which will be the macho one. One will seem impossible. One will seem like failure is the only option. One where you will struggle. When you see those roads, always pick super macho. Always pick the hard one. Always pick the one that might kill you. Why? Because if you survive, you will be even stronger. So that is the wisdom passed down from my grandfather that I pass on to you guys. Try to be the best version of you can be.
Thank you so much, Jorge. I think all of us can learn to be a little bit of super macho. I think that's tough, but hearing you tonight definitely made it very inspiring. We should all strive to be braver, take more risks. I can tell you that by judging by the chat room on YouTube, everybody's really inspired and learning your story. This is the second time I hear it, but every time I hear it, I get really emotional. I love hearing it because it resonates with me as a Mexican in the US. And I love how you bring your heritage in absolutely everything you do. You talked a lot about emotional investment in your talk, and I want to ask you, how important do you think emotional investment is for the success of a project in picking a
Well,
team emotionally?
I definitely think. I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, I can't see you, but I'm assuming you can hear me and you can see me. So emotional investment. I definitely think in the world we live in today, especially 2020, and especially the last few years, it's so easy to be cynical because the world is so cynical. It's so easy to be negative online and punch down people under you, and to some extent make yourself feel better by being too cool to care. And I am a firm believer in rebellion. And I don't think there's anything more punk rock and more rebellious today than to be an optimist, than to be a romantic, and then to be earnest with your work and with what you're trying to say. Because that resonates and that stays for a long time. And so as artists, what we all hope for, and what I think what we all dream of, is to make people feel something. And so if you invest yourself and you grab, I always say this, you grab your heart and you slice a little bit of it and you put it in your work, people feel it. And so, yes, emotional investment.
Thank you, Jorge. You also mentioned that you're kind of thriving working from home because you hate the commute. However, creative industry jobs usually require a lot of collaboration and a lot of brainstorming and bouncing ideas back and forth. What do you say to creatives who are struggling with isolation?
I personally, I feel like, it's on the people who are not struggling to try to help those who are struggling, to reach out to them. A lot of people, I think you can sense it, and suicide, and mental well-being are really important these days. So checking in on your friends, checking in on those people is very, very, very important, especially if it's work related and you feel that things are going a little rough. Reach out. This is a time to help those who might not ask for help, but it's on us to help them. Um, with that said, I also think, we are, while we're physically not connected with others, we could not have more contact thanks to thanks to the internet, and thanks to cell phones, and thanks to all those things. So I'm talked to my family in Mexico way more than I did before COVID, and they're in Mexico, so there wasn't that excuse before. So that all those things, I think, take advantage of the situation, and I think especially for the younger artists, the artists who are coming right out of school, like your classmates, your friends. If there ever was a lesson to be kind to those around you, it's now. Uh, the way the industry works, and the way the art community works, is if you help those who can't help you, uh, you grow and your community grows. So help your community, and guess what? Your community will help you back. So I think you gotta give to get. Uh, and again, helping those who can help you, that's easy. That's Hollywood. Uh, Helping those who can help you, that's being a good human being, and that's what we should be aiming for.
That's great advice, Jorge. Thank you. We have some questions here from YouTube. How did you keep up motivation to work on stories that companies had no interest in, specifically stories based in the Latino culture?
So the big thing for me was, the reality of what I do is I go to a giant studio and I go, please, sir, may I have $20 million to make my idea? So for someone to say no, that's an easy thing to get. And I don't get discouraged. So I basically go, hey, when you, especially development people, they want to make your things. They want to make good things. If they hear what I said and they don't like it, I just ask them, usually in the room, what could I have done better? Or why can't you guys do this? Just let me know. I get it that you guys can do it. And a lot of the times it's because there's other things in the studio that are similar, or they did a thing like the thing you're pitching and it didn't do well somewhere else, or for some unknown reason, someone at the company doesn't like monkeys and your thing had a monkey. Like there's a million reasons, and sometimes it has nothing to do with your thing. So you can't take these things personal. As a Latino artist, one of the biggest lessons I learned early on was, if I pitch something and only Mexicans will get it, then that audience is tiny. If I pitch a thing and only people from Latin America will get it, again, that audience is very limited. I have to make the things I make are so expensive. I have to make things that are for the world. It has to be for a giant audience. And even at Netflix, it used to be your project is for the US, and if you're lucky, it works outside of the US. But now the rules have changed thanks to streaming, which is very beneficial for people like me. Now it's your audience is the world. And if it works in the US, great. But now the audience is bigger than the US. And I love that because it's allowed people from different backgrounds to tell different types of stories. And so if you are a woman, a person of color, if the traditional creators are now changing, the traditional directors are changing. So it's a new era for creators and for directors. And I'm so excited. You guys, the things that are coming are gonna blow your minds. It's pretty remarkable.
I believe it. It's already a lot of great projects are coming through, and I can't wait to see what else you come up with. Um, Speaking of animation and the future of animation, there's a lot of students right now deciding what to do next semester. In your opinion, what are three qualities that you need to have to be successful in a career in animation? Only three,
All right,
Jorge.
only three, the big three. And this. I mean, these are, take these to heart because they work. A good attitude. You have no idea how important that is. If you're positive and you have a good attitude, that will beat incredible portfolio from a difficult person. So good attitude. Why? Because animation, like a lot of the arts, is a community of people working together. So if you can't work well with others, you're really going to struggle. You're going to have to be so good. If you're a horrible person, you're going to be so good that they put up with it. And most people out of school are not that good. So good attitude. Two, and this is huge, you have to put your best work online and constantly change it and constantly adapt, because if you want to be a character designer, you need to follow all the character designers that are professionals and look at their work and go, if my work is not up to par, that means I need to get better, right? So you can't live in a vacuum. You can't live in a bubble. You got to be aware of what's being made by people like you right out of school, and you are competing for these jobs. These aren't favors; these are jobs. So you have to have an online presence and keep updating your work and keep putting it up there. And do not get discouraged. We all started like this. We all got rejected a million times. Every single one of your heroes, I would say 99% of them got rejected. There's obviously anomalies, but most of us had to work our way up. So one, good attitude. Two, a positive online presence, always updating your work. Do not talk trash about movies and TV shows and other artists, because guess what? Everybody's going to read that stuff. When we interview anyone, the first thing you do is you look them up on Twitter, you look them up on social media, and you see what they said. And if they talk trash, right? Like if someone hated Book of Life or hated El Tigre and they put it online, I'm probably not going to hire them. So if you want to work on certain shows, do not talk trash about them. And then three, and this is the big one, you have to acknowledge the craft of what we do. So if you want to be a storyboard artist, you got to know story. And the only way, these aren't talents, these are skills. So you got to read all the books that you're supposed to read. You need, figure drawing and anatomy and construction and perspective. Like these are fundamental skills that you're expected to know. Aside from having those, what you bring to the table is very important, but you still need those fundamental skills. Especially in the world today, you are now competing with artists from all over the world, and you have to use your time wisely and use that time to improve. In school they used to say it takes 10,000 drawings to get to a good drawing. I think that applies to everything. If you want to write scripts, you have to write a ton. If you want to be a character designer, then you got to do all the things that are not sexy about character design. Mouth charts, turnarounds, orthos, all those things. That is what I always say, that's what they pay you to do. The fun part, we basically do it for free. But it is a job. It's like being a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer. There's fundamental skills you have to have. And I am a little bit torn when I look at portfolios, and everybody wants to be a visual development artist, but it's sort of this idea that visual development artists just get paid to paint whatever they want and sort of come up with random ideas. I mean, sure, that is a job that exists, but it's a tiny amount. And so, story. If you want to be a director, you gotta learn story. Very, very important. So, I hope that's enough advice about that stuff. But I'm telling you guys,
Yeah.
the world is different. You can now live anywhere in the world. There's no more. You have to move to blah blah blah. You have to get a work visa. Blah blah blah. You can now work from home. And if you're really, really good, people from everywhere will want to hire you. And the way they find you is Instagram and Twitter and social media. You just put up amazing work, and guess what? All the showrunners, all the producers, all the recruiters, we're all looking. There's so much work out there. Put yourself in a spot to do that work and post all the things you love to do. If you don't like to do blah, blah, do not put that stuff up, because what if someone hires you to do it? You're going to be miserable. For example, my end of three, I literally looked up Mesoamerican character designs, Mesoamerican illustrations, Mayan illustrations, Aztec illustrations, and I hired people that were doing this for fun. I said, look at this amazing work they're doing for fun. What are they going to do if we pay them? So that's very important. Post the things you love, and hopefully people will find you and pay you to do those things. And that's win, win, win.
That's great advice. I really like your first point there, being nice in an industry that is peculiarly small. I've learned after a while of
Oh, yeah.
working with you guys. Animation industry, everybody knows each other. So what Jorge said about not speaking poorly of other projects, I remember one time you were tweeting and it was about the Oscars, your predictions of the Oscars, and you had to stop yourself because you can actually have a really ugly afternoon by tweeting something you're not supposed to, Jorge.
I mean, I literally
But
said,
yeah,
I think these 5 movies will get nominated, and that upset people who made the other movies that I
yeah,
didn't say would be nominated.
creatives need to be very careful when opining. Jorge, you mentioned that every time you had a chance to jump into technology to make your job easier, to help you in storytelling, you've always been very proactive about it. What technology, obviously you use Wacom, but what other technologies do you depend on a lot at your job that you're like, oh my God, I couldn't do what I do every single day without this, besides your Cintiq?
I mean, I was literally going to say, I know I sound like such a salesman, but Cintiq's changed my life. Elizabeth, I'm sorry to say, they really did change my life. And now I use them, I use them to do painting mock-ups for my paintings. I use them for obviously illustrations. I now like write and sketch at the same time. I can't imagine not having a Cintiq. And if anything, I am very much dependent on very basic programs. Like I paint with Photoshop. I still design in Flash. Sandra still designs in Flash. I write in Final Draft. For editing, we've been using Evercast. I mean, thanks to COVID, all the remote working techniques have changed completely. So we use Sync Sketch. I get to look at animation and draw on top of it and do. And by the way, this wasn't things I was doing at the studio. So it's made it easier and better for me to do these things. So this literally, this window is the movie. So I get to draw on the movie. I get to direct through all this, and they record all this stuff so that they can go, hey, this shot you said this. So it keeps me honest about being direct with my direction. But I really, really depend on the internet and those social interactions. And, the people we work with are in Toronto, but there's artists all over the world that worked on Maya, Brazil and Paraguay and Leningrad. We had artists everywhere, and I really thrive on collaborating with people who didn't grow up with my experiences, and they grew up with different experiences, and I can collaborate with them, and we can discuss things in ways that I never would see. So that to me has been a huge thing, and obviously I'm working harder because I wasn't conscious of the unconscious bias of gender in animation, and so we tried really hard on my end. 50% of our crew was female, and that's it's a huge deal in animation because I would go to animation schools and I would see there were more women than men in school, but then you would look at the workforce and it was like less than 20%. So there was a big drop off. So and women in animation and all the organizations that help gender parity, I really took that to heart. And as a minority and someone with a disability, I'm trying really hard to make these things more balanced for people like me.
Thank you, Jorge. Yes, I've seen you work a lot also with other organizations like Rise Up Animation, who helps,
Oh
is
yeah.
a group helping the Black community also in animation. So yeah, we're very happy to wrap up Connected Ink with somebody so involved with so many arms and in so many different areas, but always with the same goal, which is to share, always with a very strong heart and a very genuine just a very genuine idea. It's something that you're not faking. It comes from the heart, Jorge, and we can feel it. We felt it tonight. We're going to wrap up because we know that your muse is waiting for you for dinner. And
Yes.
we want to We want to thank her for letting us talk to you tonight, and we want to thank Netflix and Esther who helped us so much throughout this entire process. I want to thank my team for helping us also put this together, and everyone who joined us tonight on this talk. Thank you so much. Please follow Jorge on social media. He's very active on Twitter. He's very active on Instagram. He's always posting inspiring content. You can find out more about what he's doing to help the young animation community. And just very fun content that he's always posting. So thank you, Jorge. If you have any last words you want to share before you go to dinner?
Just you guys, this is our time. For all the people graduating from school, you get bragging rights forever that you graduated during a pandemic, and now that we know there's a cure coming, the world will get better. So this is your time. Take all this quarantine time to sharpen your skills and sharpen your vision of what you want to make. And we don't get to choose how much talent we're born with, but we definitely get to choose what we do with our time. So use your time wisely because it's gold. And I encourage you all to take advantage of the situation and make amazing things. Use it to fuel yourselves. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Peter.